Hello and welcome to our forum on the Middle Township Public Schools bond referendum. The vote on September 17th is about more than our schools. It's about improvements that would make Middle Township an even more attractive place to live, work, and raise a family. I appreciate everyone participating tonight, whether you're in person or joining us from home. We've shared a lot of information about the referendum before tonight. You might already have seen our website, social media posts, postcards, or one of the other ways we've been communicating. But this forum is a little different. You'll have the chance to ask questions and hear directly from our district team and professional consultants. We hope you will find it helpful as you prepare to vote on September 17th. Let's start by introducing our panelists from the Middle Township School District. We have Stephanie Thomas, our President of our Board of Education. Sharon Rementer, Principal of Middle Township High School. Josh McCarty, Assistant Principal of Athletics at Middle Township High School. Jeff Wortman, Principal of Middle Township Middle School. Chris Pascalitis, Principal of Middle Township Elementary 1. Carrie Sinone, Principal of Middle Township Elementary 2. And Katie Taylor, Instructional Supervisor of Elementary 1. We also have Oka Pinchel from Spiesel Architect Group here. And our financial professionals are joining us virtually. They are bond counsel Everett Johnson and financial advisor Danielle Marino. Our panelists will cover a range of topics related to the proposed improvements and funding strategy. They'll talk briefly, but we'll leave plenty of time for your questions. Let's go over the process for asking questions tonight. We'll ask our in-person attendees to come up to the mic. Tonight's forum is devoted to the bond referendum, so please stick to the topic and keep your questions brief so we can get to as many people as possible. If you're tuning in at home, use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen to ask a question. We will direct questions to our panelists during the related segment, and if time permits, we'll get to any remaining questions at the end of the forum. This forum is being recorded and will be posted on our website and YouTube account. Anyone who's in the building tonight can join us after the forum for the tour of our pre-K classrooms that are targeted for renovation. Now let's get started. I'll ask our board president, Stephanie Thomas, to talk about how we came to the decision to hold a bond referendum. Then she and architect Oka Pinchel will talk a little bit about proposed improvements. Stephanie, some people have asked us, why not just pay for the projects out of the regular budget?
Good evening, everyone. Well, the simplest explanation for that is that the budget provides funds for people or human capital, and the referendum will provide funding for projects. So budget covers salaries, benefits, and it doesn't leave much for projects. The referendum will offer a chance to get upfront funding for projects or improvements, and that cannot be used for staffing costs. And additionally, the state will provide $3 million in aid toward the projects upon voter approval.
Thank you, Stephanie. It's also worth noting that we do our best to stretch our budget. Middle Township Schools has the lowest per pupil cost in Cape County, and we're recently rated the 10th most cost-efficient school district in the state of New Jersey, where there are over 600 school districts.
Yes, and that's right. We are actually very proud of operating with that fiscal responsibility via those two stats that Dr. Salvo just mentioned. The bond referendum is an extension of that strategy. So via the referendum, we're looking for funds that'll meet the community's needs. First and foremost, the pre-K space that we need for more students. We've had long waiting lists of families that we've had to unfortunately turn away for pre-K services. And that means that those families will have to pay thousands of dollars per year for pre-K services or go without that valuable program. Also, the athletic area upgrades are very important, not only to our students, but also to our local recreation leagues and our community at large.
Thank you. We know these projects would have a lot of benefit for our community. Let's hear more about the work proposed from our buildings from our architect, Oka Pinchel. Oka.
Thank you, Dr. Salvo. Building additions at 2 elementary schools are central to the proposal. At Elementary 1, the building addition would create 4 new pre-K classrooms, along with offices and storage. Other classrooms would be renovated for pre-K with more storage, and accessible bathrooms required for pre-K classrooms. Aging modular classrooms would be removed. We would replace outdated classroom UVs that control heating, cooling, and flow of fresh air. Elementary number 2 also would get an addition of a second grade wing. Second grade is moving from elementary 1 as part of overall plan to free up space there. This school also would get small group instruction rooms and new guidance office. The area next to the media center, which is currently underutilized, would be enclosed to use as a STEAM lab once this improvement is complete. The other projects would upgrade athletic areas. Proposal to install synthetic turf field at Memorial Field. Synthetic turf is weather resistant, would provide much more availability, requires less maintenance than grass fields, no mowing, fertilizing, or reseeding. Lighting at the field would be replaced with more efficient LED fixtures and more secure lighting poles. The home side bleachers need replacement. As part of the project, we would also replace the press box at the top of the bleachers. Finally, the tennis courts outside the high school would be resurfaced. Thanks for giving us the run.
Thank you, Olga. One question we've heard in the community, if holding a September vote will let us get an earlier start than holding a vote in November. But can you expand upon that?
Sure. Actually, the September vote is the only way we have a chance of starting work next summer. Could not do that with a November vote. There are steps to prepare for construction after a referendum passes, which requires time. We have to create detailed designs and prepare for the contract bidding process, which takes time.
Thank you. We've also heard some questions out in the community about what happens if the referendum doesn't pass, if these projects don't get done. So I think it's important to restate that updating our buildings is essential to give students in our community the services that they need and to retain and recruit the best teachers. If we can't provide enough pre-K classrooms, excuse me, lost my space, and other instructional space, and we have to continue holding classes on a cafeteria stage and converted offices, families are likely to start overlooking for educational needs somewhere else. That has a ripple effect. If enrollment decreases, so does our state funding, and that leads to a loss in staff and a loss in services. There's no way that we can fit all these improvements in a regular budget. But we have to attempt to do these projects at a later date. Construction prices will only rise. The cost of construction will never be lower than it is now. We'll hear from more from our principals later and how the proposed improvements would impact the learning environment. For now, we'll see if anyone has any questions about the proposed projects. Does anybody have any questions? Please come up to the mic.
I'll use it if you want me to. Why do we pay for pre-K?
I'm sorry, what your question? What?
Responsibility. Why are we paying for it?
It's actually free state money. We're not actually paying for it. The state gives us free pre-K funding, about $10,000 a student.
Get away with that, and then we don't have to bill. We lose $10,000 per student. But how does that affect the rest of the K through 12?
Well, it affects those parents who, those parents of 3 and 4 year olds who need.
Educate your child prior to kindergarten. My friend had 4, she took care of them all herself. So why, and or my taxes, the state, whatever, going toward pre-K?
Well, unfortunately, not every family is able to stay home and raise their children, 3 or 4 year olds. They need to go to school. Yeah.
Don't do the changes and you have to use the auditorium and cafeteria, they're gonna look for other resources. Well, what's wrong with that? Let them look for other resources, lower our taxes, don't go building more.
Yeah, in reality, that's not what's gonna happen. If these students leave us at 3 and 4-year-old and go to another school that offers pre-K, we're gonna lose those students probably through 8th grade. That's a loss of enrollment, that's a loss of teachers, that's a loss of services. You're gonna end up paying more in taxes for less services if we see a decline in enrollment. You can see that happening around Upper Township, Dennis Township, so. Mm.
I didn't think I was gonna mention this, it's
Mm.
not my intent, so I
Mm.
apologize.
Mm.
But if you're saying that you don't have enough student body, then the alternatives is consolidation. And I'm not saying that, I didn't plan on saying that, but if that's the case, if we don't have enough students coming in, then you really have to start planning for consolidation. The reason being that the first person who has the plan and puts it into progress
Yeah.
is the one that has the bigger plane.
I understand what your agenda here is, but we do have the students in place. We got 100 families, 3 and 4-year-olds who are waiting in a pre-K, and I can't get them in because
I should not have to pay for it. Preschool is a parental responsibility. It is not a K through 12 responsibility.
I disagree.
Well,
I respectfully disagree. Yeah,
it's not state mandated. And we should not be providing a service that's costing us money and is gonna cost us a construction bill.
if those students who don't attend preschool, we have students who don't attend preschool here, and they come in at kindergarten or 1st grade, those students, most of those students need more services over the course of their elementary school time. That costs you more money in the long run than getting them in early and providing those services academically and socially. It'll save you money in the long run by having them start early. No,
My friend,
Yeah.
she did not have her children in preschool.
Yeah.
And they told her that they probably were gonna be behind when they got to kindergarten.
Right.
And in fact, they were ahead. So you cannot say.
I can say that because I've had 3 children come for this preschool and they had a great experience.
I'm just saying, if you're talking construction for pre-K,
Mm.
I see it as a no starter.
Okay, well, we appreciate that.
I'm not gonna figure out how to do that.
Mhm.
Sorry.
Next question.
Hello, my name is Wanda Shepherd from Whitesboro, and one of my some of my concerns are we can spend the money on history for the kids to learn, their history and how to write. They don't know how to write their name, sign their names, and get some more teachers here. So that was concern about the money. Thank you.
Thank you.
I actually have 2 questions. They're both about the AstroTurf. The first being whether or not the toxic effects of that was researched at all before we decided to add that to the referendum.
Yes, first of all, it's no longer called AstroTurf anymore. That went out when I played in the 80s.
Synthetic turf.
Yes, Oka, you can respond to that.
Correct. So the new turf system has advanced much more than what it used to be. Currently, we are not into the design phase where all these specification details would be figured out. The specifications are not finalized. That part typically happens post-referendum approval. So we haven't designed the system yet, but overall, the idea is to provide the turf system. Majority of the turf system these days have gone towards providing, natural infill and those kind of combination systems, which are much better than what they used to be, which were called toxic. The systems that we spec these days are not considered toxic, and they're more kind of like considered green and recycled material that's being used in the systems.
But you can't guarantee that ahead of time. And recycled such as the tires that they shred to use as infill?
So we will have, the cost that we have in the referendum covers these kind of specification. It would cover the cost for, natural fill material and to reduce the, material like the rubber material and things like that. So There is no need to guarantee at this point because you will have options to choose the system that works best for the district and the student body here. So we will have those options. It's just that it's not finalized yet. But instead of giving guarantee, I can say we do have money to choose different options from what works for the students and the community here.
Okay, because
Yeah.
I have paperwork here from the New Jersey Work Environment Council, and we are in New Jersey, about the toxic metals that can sometimes be in synthetic turf, to include zinc, lead, arsenic, cadmium, and chromium, which can have harmful effects on people and the environment.
Mhm.
Carcinogens, including PAHs and PFAs, latex and other rubbers, which of course can be an allergenic. Phthalates are in them, but also you mentioned that there would be less maintenance on these fields, and I'm wondering if the fact that you need different equipment to take care of these fields as opposed to the equipment we already have for regular grass fields has been taken into account there. And the fact that you also still need to irrigate these fields.
You don't irrigate turf fields. They don't get irrigated. They're
Okay,
synthetic
everything
turf.
I've looked into says that you still irrigate them.
No, I'm sorry, they don't. Grass fields get irrigated.
So
And they're often, per this, maximum last about 5 to 10 years with the proper maintenance, and grass fields typically are about 15.
The maximum life is 12 to 15 years, if you take care of it, and hopefully we will plan to do that. The economic, advantage for having a turf field, I don't know if anybody watches football, but high school football that starts this weekend in Ocean City, the HD, and they're having a football jamboree for 3 days. And their community is going to probably benefit about $750,000 in economic value. That could happen here. In 2 or 3 years, that economic value can pay for that turf itself. We got field hockey, soccer, football, lacrosse who are dying to have tournaments in this area. They can't because we can't offer them the fields because they're grass and they're overused. So in terms of money and costs, it costs us about $50,000 a year to maintain one field, Memorial Field. We cut that field about 100 times a year, twice a week, and we have 11 to 12 events on that field for $50,000. That includes labor, irrigation, weed, seeding, trimming, cutting, and as I mentioned, labor. So this pays for itself in time.
And to add to that, the 5 to 10 year, life that we discussed. First of all, it's 10 to 15, like Dave stated, but that's just for the synthetic turf, which is the top portion of the entire system. This field will receive underground drainage system, the sub base, potentially the pad, and the turf on top of it. So turf is just one piece of the entire system. The rest of the system that goes underneath the turf is expected to last at least 30 years, if not more. So overall, average system, life is close to be 20 years. That's how we see it.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Hello, my name is Andrea Mayer, and I have been a resident of Middle for 38 years. I had 4 children graduate from Middle High School. My husband was the head soccer coach for 16 years. I do appreciate you having a forum like this and allowing the community to talk about their concerns. I have 2 problems with it, and it's the timing and the tactics. So first, the timing. This is asking a community to put out a lot of money at a time when people are struggling all over the place, between prices of gas being high, food prices, and utilities. To add debt at this particular time, I'm not talking about the project, I'm talking about this particular time, seems irresponsible. When you break down the loan amount, it seems reasonable, very feasible for some people. It would be no problem for me and probably no problem for most of you. But it would be a problem for families that have senior citizens on a fixed income, who have disabled citizens, private school parents who are already sending their children somewhere else, homeschool families. We have a very unstable economy, which means we have a very unstable future. RFK recently said just the other night, and it just blew me away. He said 57% of the United States citizenship right now could not come up with $1,000 cash in an emergency. That is where many people are. So that's the reality of the voice that I think is missing here. People say, oh, it's free preschool. There is no such thing as free. We all know that, from the federal government to the state government to our local municipalities. Nothing is for free. Currently, this is my tax bill, and I'm all for kids and I'm all for learning and education. But this red section is 52% of what I pay for my school taxes right now. And that's okay. Never complained about it. But I'm looking at the timing of this. The average median income in Cape May County is $80,000. Now, this is where the question can come in, Dave, because I am a little bit confused about it. The idea, and this is what I read, that we paid, and I don't know if we would have been paying the same if this referendum was put on the regular ballot in November, but that we paid, I'm going to say 40,000. I could be off, and you can correct me when I'm finished, but here's my point. If the average median income is 80, and we just took 40,000 to put it on a whole separate day where less people will come out, as they do on intermittent elections, and the hours are limited, I'd say, wait a minute, how responsible are we? If I make 80,000 a year and I just said to my family, we're putting out 40,000 just to put something on a ballot that could have been in November, which, by the way, you said would delay the process. We're talking 7 weeks. This is what really raised my attention. It was like, wait a minute, why aren't we allowing the whole community? I didn't even hear about this until I heard about the date. And then I got my postcard the next day, which I greatly appreciated. So I would just say timing and tactics. If this referendum does not pass, there's nothing wrong with putting on the shelf. I'd say when I looked at the HVAC being part of the problem, I'm like, yo, that's a big problem. Turf fields, my husband would have loved to have had, and I think he even voiced that back in the day. So there are things, but when you get into discussions of preschool and upgrades, you got to look at where are we at right now in our economy. And Dave, would it be the same amount of money if we had this on the ballot in November? Or would it have been free?
Well, let me start by this. Construction costs aren't going down.
Right.
So if we move this to 3 years from now, you're going to be paying a lot more for a lot less than we're asking today. Prices aren't going down. Construction is not going to be any cheaper today. You're getting it at the cheapest rate today than you will 3 years from now. Well, let me finish.
I will. I'll let you finish.
So we're getting the best price we can get. 2 years from now, you're not getting that same price.
Dave, economically, you don't know where we will be in 2 years. You really can't. The whole economy can change in 2 years. I mean,
I can tell you're not going to be paying less taxes, and I can tell you construction costs aren't going to be the same. And I can tell you that if this doesn't pass, I'm going to be laying off teachers. And that staff, their economy is not going to be in pretty good shape.
so that seems to be a whole separate issue than
Yeah.
what we're voting on.
Well, no, that's the reality of the situation.
So
If
you
I
don't
can't-
upgrade, you're going to lose teachers.
If I don't have student enrollment, I lose teachers. That's how
And
it
your
works.
student enrollment is just coming from 3 and 4 year olds? Is that what you're telling me?
No, it comes from everybody. It comes from high school. We lose kids at different high schools all the time for
Mhm.
recruitment athletics. You know that. You've had kids play soccer. So we fight that battle every day for every student. Every student comes with a dollar figure.
I appreciate that
Yeah.
we're the lowest in the county, and I did
We
look that
spend the
up.
lowest, which
That's
means.
awesome.
Yeah.
See, this is
It-
not adversarial.
Right.
This is just trying to lend some, when people are opposed, it's not because they're opposed to the idea.
Right.
They're opposed to maybe the times we are in right now.
I don't
And
think
like,
that- yeah,
like
I
I
don't-
said, Dave, I can afford it, but there's a lot of people that can't.
Disagree. I don't think it's going to be any different 2 years from now. I think the taxes are still going to be there. The economy is still going
Taxes
to
will
be there. And we're getting the cheapest price we can get today. 2 years from now, we're not going to get that price. We're going to end up paying more for less.
All right, well, I won't
Well,
argue
yeah.
what's an abstract right there, but I thank you for allowing me to give my opinion, and for those reasons that I wouldn't be able to support it.
Okay.
Hi, my name's Sherry Petty. Can you hear me? Sherry Pettiani. I wasn't really planning on speaking, but then I felt I needed to. I have a gazillion things. First of all, one of my questions was about the $43,000 for the
Mhm.
7 weeks of
Yeah.
making the special election. I don't see that that's being beneficial to anyone.
Can I answer
Um,
that?
Well, you kind of did, but I just.
No, I'll elaborate
Okay,
on that.
Go ahead.
We didn't put it on the November election because we didn't want to make this political. This is a school construction referendum. It's not a political.
I don't
ref-
believe anybody's made it political to this point
If you
yet.
put it on the November ballot, it becomes political.
There's always been school questions on the ballots that I'm,
Not for our referendum.
storing out. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was one thing. My other thing is you said about the pre-K 3 and 4-year-olds. But previous to that, you said you were moving the second graders. So wouldn't that free up a bunch of classrooms at
No,
that
we have,
building?
we have to renovate those second classrooms for more pre-K rooms. The addition only gives us 4 rooms of new, and I think we're renovating 6 rooms of second grade room to accommodate the other preschool students.
Okay, and my other thing is I'm a retired teacher, never locally. Are you gonna get like 3 and 4-year-olds? You're talking potty training, you're talking multiple issues, you're talking. When I worked, the 3-year-old program was for the most at-risk children who needed that extra boost to get them going. I agree with the first person that parents have to take back responsibility for their own children. If my child was 3, I didn't send my 4-year-olds when we had the 4-year-old program because I just didn't think that was right. And 3-year-olds, many of them are not potty trained. Who's going to be responsible for that in today's world?
Our great staff.
Changing diapers.
Who's been responsible for that since we've had the pre-K program?
I don't know. Okay, also with the synthetic grass or whatever, I don't want to use the word turf. The drainage systems and all of that, will we have staff who will be able to, it's one thing to mow a lawn or to seed a lawn, but to actually repair drainage and maintain that? Is that something that comes as a guarantee with the company, or is that something will any of our staff members be able to maintain those drains, get clogged, they plug up,
Our guys do routine maintenance. When you got something of that nature, we usually have to get consultants or drainage people, electric, whatever it may be.
Well, that's
But
what I'm
that's-
saying. So
but
that's
that's
an
where we-
additional cost and a
No.
cost that's already
But we have that now.
astronomical.
And we're paying people to help the drainage now at Memorial Field. And it's grass.
So
Just for me, 26 million, and then you read that the state is kicking in 3 million.
Mhm.
That's an awful lot of money to put on taxpayers for something that benefits a small amount of people. And I don't know where all the other teams are coming from. If you're gonna bring in out-of-town people, well, then their taxpayers aren't even paying for anything.
Yeah, but those people will be buying food, spending gas, and maybe living in hotels. You don't think
In
so?
Middle Township, I don't think we have that many hotels.
No, but
and-
maybe Rio Grande. My son played travel baseball and football. We've taken kids all over the country.
Oh,
to
so
spend a
it's
lot of-
big.
Yeah, so you've spent a lot of money in different places.
I did spend money there.
Why won't we get that money here? I'm sure the businesses on Route 9 wouldn't mind.
I'm sure they wouldn't mind, but at the expense to the taxpayers at the tune of 26.5 million minus 3 million, and then additional costs for whatever drainage issues we have or any kind of things like that. And, my other question is, you keep bringing up the pre-K thing. Well, has our enrollment dropped? Is that why we're now lowering to 3-year-olds?
No, we've had many requests for 3-year-olds to come. We turned away 100 families that
Well-
live in your neighborhood.
Any family is going to request it because that takes a big chunk of money out of them.
Exactly why we're trying to do what we're doing.
But it shouldn't fall on the taxpayers.
They're taxpayers too.
You know what? I really don't know that this is productive.
Yeah.
Let me just move on then, because I don't see all the and then I just had a question. I did receive the postcard, which was helpful, but then that again is an additional expense that was put out. I'm guessing with taxpayers' monies to put out those postcards to everyone. And then are we ever going to get like the true, everything I've read said we don't have like the true impact yet of what it's going to be on a taxpayer? Will we have those numbers before this September 17th
Yeah,
election?
those numbers have been posted on our website for an average home of 250. The average assessed home in Middle Township is 251,000. You may be below that, you may be above.
I don't believe that number for a second,
Well,
but okay.
Yeah, that came right from the county and the state. So that's the number. We don't make that number up.
So our county office, if I go there and say, what's the
You
average?
can go to the township hall and ask them what the average assessed house is. An average assessed house at 251 is $165 a year, $13 a month.
Okay, but that's a guaranteed thing because I do believe I read those numbers and that was supposed to be not the final number, I believe what the words were.
No, and you'll hear from our bond counsel in a little while who explain that, but yes, that's the number.
I can jump in. This is Danielle Marino. I'm with Phoenix Advisors. We're the financial advisor. And those numbers are preliminary until the bonds are sold. So the referendum has to pass first. However, we use a conservative interest rate that's well above current rates to project those amounts. So once the bonds are sold, we expect that it will come in lower than what you're seeing on the screen now.
That's a guarantee?
It's
Guaranteed they'd be lower because you're asking us to vote for something that we don't have actual numbers on.
It's not guaranteed, certainly not, because the bond market could change. However, if anything, you know, with what's just been coming out in the news with the Federal Reserve, rates are expected to drop. So it'll become an even better interest rate than we've been projecting during this referendum process. So I can't say guaranteed, but it's highly likely that the cost will be lower than projected.
Okay, and then I have, it was mentioned at a previous meeting that there were soft costs that the taxpayers would incur also, that the list was not finalized. Do we have a list of all those additional costs or?
So,
Yeah,
can I answer?
yeah.
Sure. Yeah, so this cost estimate and the total amount that you are seeing has soft cost included in there. So the actual soft cost data would be available post-referendum because those costs are expected to be paid to architects, engineers, you know, design team, construction project managers, which are only hired post approval of the referendum. But there is a provision for those costs in the total amount that you're seeing. So actual data is currently unavailable to be shared, but it's something we have to plan for before, you know, people vote for it. And that's why.
So many of the
it's-
amounts would be post as opposed to pre.
Right, but it's not going to increase any tax impact because it's accounted for in these calculations already. So it's not expected to impact your taxes.
Okay. All right. Thank you for your time.
Good evening. My name is Vivian Downing, and I'm one of those senior citizens living on a fixed income. I went to the tax assessor's office this week and asked for the average price assessed value of a home in Middle Township. They do not have that information. I find that interesting when you tell me that you're relying on information from the state of New Jersey. Just a comment. First of all, with regard to the synthetic turf, recent studies have shown that there is a 58% more likely, it's more likely for students to sustain an injury during athletic activities on artificial or synthetic turf compared to grass. These are injuries that are significant. These are children who are playing high school football, soccer, men's and women, as well as those who are involved in other sports, such as rugby. Lower extremity, upper extremity, and torso injuries were also found to occur with higher incident on artificial or synthetic turf. Previous studies, not necessarily as comprehensive as the one I'm referring to, which was done by University Hospital Sports Medicine Institute and Case Western Reserve University, back up these same statistics. And this study does not include stress on the knees, shins, ankles, and feet of athletes who are running up and down synthetic turf. I have 3 grandchildren who are all involved in these types of sports activities. And I have been with the coaches that these children have played under for years. None of them, not one, will stand up and say to me that they feel children should be playing on this type of surface. And if you compare this to a surface on a track, at a track meet, any of you who have walked on a track can feel the sponginess in it. That sponginess is not there on a football field or a soccer field or a rugby field. I feel we are putting our children at risk. And I know that there are colleges and universities that have this type of synthetic fields, and they are having problems. They are having difficulty maintaining because the cleats that these kids wear present wear and tear. Whether or not this type of synthetic turf is viable, I think, is a serious question that we need to address. And I would rather pay my tax dollars to have somebody mow the grass than see one child receive an injury that's going to limit their life. Further, I would like to know if you're hiring teachers to take care of these preschool students, you're going to have to bus them. Who's going to pay for the additional busing, for the bus drivers, for the aides that are going to have to be in the classrooms and on these buses? Who's going to pay the teachers' salaries and their benefits? What additional cost is involved here that is going to be passed on to taxpayers in addition to this referendum that you're asking for?
Well, I'll answer that. The teachers and the aides are paid for by preschool funding, 100%. That doesn't come out of taxpayer money.
And does that come to you every year for those
Yes,
children?
every year. And the busing itself, we're already sending buses all over the township. They would just get on those buses.
And you have room on those buses
We
for
do.
those children? Do you have a breakdown of how this $26.5 million is going to be used? What portion of it is going to go to fields? What portion is going to go to building classrooms, et cetera, et cetera? And my questions beyond that are, what is the estimated cost of maintaining these additional buildings as well as these additional fields? And when these fields need to be replaced, I'm told that there are many landfills that will not accept the turf because of the things that are in it that the lady before me described. These are serious things that we need to consider for our own environment. I thank you for letting me share my opinions. I too am very concerned about the necessity for this. I think that these 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds have parents who should be responsible for seeing that they are potty trained and that they are able to come to school when they reach kindergarten age. Thank you.
Hi, Cheryl Coleman, senior citizen, fixed income. And I've never noticed in all the years I've been here, and I've been in Middle Township for nearly 40 years. And there have been referendums in the past. And I don't know, have these bonds been paid off? Because I have never seen my taxes go down, not once. So you guys have never paid off these bonds?
Yes, we've paid off bonds.
Then how come when the bond got paid off, I never saw a drop?
because we end up having another referendum probably 10 years after that.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah, the math doesn't work for me.
okay. Well,
All right. I have another question about the architecture. We just keep expanding out. Has it never occurred to anybody that we can build up and then you could have sports fields outside the building? I mean, the high school, the middle school, you kept putting wings on, you're putting wings on here. I know when I moved in, there was no wing there or 3 wings out there. There was this building. Nobody ever goes up.
Yes, I
go ahead, answer that, yeah.
I can take that question. That's a great question. We run into this a lot. This being a school building, putting a second floor addition on any school building is very challenging in terms of constructability because schools cannot be shut down for 18 months of time, which is required to build any such construction. We have to continue operating while the construction is in progress. The existing buildings are not designed to take second floor addition. There is major structural foundation, that kind of work required, which is very expensive to do. And in terms of construction and the time it takes and the impact on the school schedule makes it almost impossible. And it's just not feasible to propose that to the school building that's currently, running like full time. So that restricts us. If this building was kind of like a vacant building, we could do whatever, and however we want to do. But this being a school building, which operates like pretty much full time, it's a little bit difficult to address that level of construction. Yeah.
Okay. I realize that I'm going far afield here, but elementary number 2 is a relatively new building. Should have been planned for a second floor there. Just like right now, you're putting on an additional wing here and again on number 2. Should probably plan for the future and plan for it to be going up as well in the future. Because you just keep going out and out and out. You probably should plan ahead. And I know we're not addressing this, but I'm gonna because I'm standing up here. The playgrounds all around this one building, they're lovely playgrounds. They're all rusty and now they're scary. Are you guys going to fix them and replace them too? Where's that money coming from?
Thank you. Can we hold question for in person? I have somebody who's been waiting online for a question. Just give us 1 minute, please. You got somebody? Yep. I don't see it. What was the question?
Oh, they're doing an online question.
What's that? How old are, the question online was, how old are the unit ventilators? Closely, how old are the unit ventilators and how many we are replacing? I believe they're close to 40 years old, Mr. P. And we're replacing, I believe, 19. That was the question that came online. Thank you. And now, yep.
Good evening. I'm Dolores Spall, and I'm glad we can voice an opinion. I'm on a total fixed income and a Social Security only. I don't need my taxes raised with this unnecessary stuff. And another thing, the Middle Township High School don't even own the football field. They rent it. So why are we putting something on somebody else's property? Because when I went to school here, and I did go to school here, they rented that field. They never owned it. Every event. And that's the way it went down. So why are we putting money into something that don't belong to us?
We do own the field. It's Middle Township High School's field. It's owned by the district.
And I don't really think that these little kids should be going to school. I don't care how trained they are. They have accidents and they do need changing. I'm not for that either. Not with a 3-year-old kid. That's what nurseries are for. So if they got to have a babysitter, get a nursery. That's the way I feel. And I don't want my taxes increasing more than they are because they're high enough as is. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Good evening. I'm Daniel Money. I've been a Middle Township resident for 50 years. I've raised my children here who are now parents and have grandchildren, my grandchildren here, and my great-grandchildren here. And they're going through the school system now. But see, it's not just preschool, it's getting kids prepared to go through school and be prepared to be educated equally and well. And that's what I see as an educator for 50 years is important to this community. Middle Township has a first-class educational system for the entire community. The beauty of that is that when kids leave here, some stay, some move on, but they come out prepared to exist and progress as young adults representing their community. So I was on the board a few years ago and we put the high school together. And if you take a ride around Middle Township, when you go past the administration building, you see a little bell tower there. That was a school that existed to prepare some of us at that time to be adults. Fortunately for me, I was in Ocean City, but Middle Township had area schools, Middle Township, in Courthouse, White Spur, Irma, all around. And that when you brought the kids together, the quality of education just has improved tremendously. You're looking at your graduation statistics, that's what you're looking at. Look at what happens with pre-K kids coming in. And yes, I have a great grandson who's in preschool, 3 years old. And yes, sir, he needed potty training and somebody potty trained him in school. Things have changed tremendously in school. And I can tell you, if we weren't prepared to do this, we would have died as a district in 2020 when COVID hit here. These teachers did a great job. The administration led this district well, and I have to commend the community for stepping up. I've stepped up, my taxes were raised, but guess what? It's taking care of the next generation of leaders and educators and construction workers and custodians, people in this community that progress. And if you want to look at why our enrollment is growing, what's happening on the island, the barrier islands? Nobody can afford a property over there that doesn't live in Cape May County. So everybody's moving to Middle Township. It's a much more progressive family community. And I'm blessed to be here. And we're blessed to be part of that. And yes, it's going to cost us some more money, but guess what? Those people who took care of the old buildings in the areas of Middle Township at that time, they had a problem, but they stepped up. Those farmers, those individuals who had little money then, they pitched in, and guess what we have now? Beautiful facilities, quality education, and great leadership and teachers in the building taking care of our children, moving them on to take their place in society. So it's not just the referendum for preschool, it's a referendum on education in Middle Township. And I applaud the effort. It's gonna cost money, but nothing comes cheap. Thank you.
Before we go, Richard, can you hold a second? I got two more online. One of the questions was regarding the senior tax freeze. There is a senior tax freeze on taxes. It all depends on your income level. I believe we have, that's in a slide later on. It all depends on your individual income. So there is a tax freeze for seniors, but it all depends on your income. The other question is, what are the timelines for these projects? The timeline is if the referendum passes, we will do design and architectural work, and we're hoping to break ground on one of the projects this summer. And then from that point on, it's probably 18 months to 2 years before everything's completed. The other question was, how do you keep construction from interfering with learning? That's always a challenge when you're doing construction in the building. Fortunately, most of this construction is outside of the building, so we'll have to navigate that. And then whatever is going to get renovated inside the building will have to happen when school's not in session. How much is in the budget for turf, bleachers, and tennis courts? I believe it's close to 4 million total. The bleachers themselves, the lights themselves are about 750,000. And they're, be honest with you, we probably, if we get through this season with the lights, that'll be a lot. The bleachers, we probably have 2 years life on the bleachers. We continue to weld them and try to keep them safe, but eventually they're going to get condemned. And what was the bleacher price?
980.
Yeah, almost $1 million for bleachers. And the turf itself is almost, the drainage and everything involved in the field is another 2 million. Regardless of what happens with the turf, the bleachers and the lights have to be replaced, and we don't have the money in our budget to do either one of them. So we're going to have to face that challenge when the time comes. I think that was it for online. Yes, sir.
Richard Sterling. When I started teaching here, my wife and I were paid $10,600 a year. So you can see where it's gone. But anyway, my question is about the $43,000 cost at the board meeting. Correct me, please, somebody, if I'm wrong with this. The cost of that was going to be rolled within this referendum, so we wouldn't see the cost for taxpayers, but it was $43,000 we had to put out to change. Listening to Ann say it was a 7-week time frame there, a lot of money. However, my question is with somebody said about soft causes, do we have to pay on top of the $43,000 the architect for the preliminary drawings and things? How much does that money come to? If the referendum does not pass, what is the total cost plus the $43,000 that the township is out?
First of all, of course, we have to pay people that work. You know, we have to pay the engineers, the architects, and everybody else that's involved. So yes, they've done preliminary work. To get the question on the ballot, we had to submit 6 proposal plans to the state of New Jersey.
Do you have a sum of money, Mr. Dr. Salvo, of what if the referendum doesn't pass?
If it fails,
yes,
estimated, you know what your estimated cost would be? It's not guaranteed.
I don't know. Just an estimate.
So are you asking the cost
If
of the
the
design of these projects? Because if
What
the
work
referendum
you've done?
doesn't pass, there won't be any design. The projects won't move forward.
The question is, how much are we up to this point?
Right.
How
So
much do we owe the architects?
Up to this point, it's very minimal. Typically, the architect's fees for pre-referendum services are very minimal, like $20,000 for all.
So now it's
work that's been
63,000
done.
instead of the 43. That's all. That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. Is there any other costs other than architect that, that are in there?
Any soft costs, environmental engineer that we may need for drainage,
No, I mean before, David, that like
Right
you
now.
had to hire for the,
what's that?
So,
Marketing, bond counsel, that had to prepare the bond.
what I'm saying is, could this be over 100,000, not the 43?
I can't tell you that. It's probably going to be 60 to 75, but that's not a guaranteed number. It could be lower, it could be higher.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Hi, my name is Gary Coleman. I'm sure most of the people on the board know me. I only have one question. When elementary number 2 was built, we acquired Memorial Field for green space. Has the state of New Jersey changed anything for green space? I believe it used to be we had to have a 4x4 square area for every student that was in the facility. Is that still out there?
So I'm not aware of any such provision for that property. We have submitted the plans to the local planning and we have reviewed those. And the synthetic turf field is possible at Memorial Field. And there is no conflict with the number of students versus green space requirement. I mean, we do schools all the time, and we are not required to provide this level of green space for per student count. I don't know where that information.
Gary, if green space was required, the state wouldn't approve the project.
That's all I wanted to know.
Thank you.
That was it.
Yeah.
Oh, one other thing, with the pre-K. It's really nice that you guys are gonna do this for the parents and everything, and you're gonna take the kids and you're gonna put them in about what, age 3 or 4? Yeah, I think that's really great. Just you see one minor problem with that, which is the parents are not really going to have enough time to imprint on their children and give them their values. They're going to have to go with the values which are being installed to them through a teacher or an aide. And I see that what this might really be is the more we can get the kids out of the home, the more we can get parents working, bringing in more tax dollars for the government.
Well, I think you made our argument, Gary. I appreciate that. If more kids are in school, more parents are working, and that helps the community. We have the students in any grade levels 6 to 7 hours a day. That leaves a lot of time for parents to be parents.
I hope so. Thank you, Dave,
Yeah.
and thank you.
Okay. We still have some more presenters, so let's take a look at the projects and why they're needed. We're going to talk, we mentioned it in some of the questions, and I thank you for those questions regarding preschool and childcare costs. We talked about the demand for pre-K, and when school begins next week, we won't have the space that I mentioned to serve all our pre-K age children in Middle Township. That leaves families with a decision to spend $10,000 or more on private preschool or skip preschool and all the benefits it has for our kids. Mr. Pascalitis, the principal at Elementary 1, and Katie Taylor, the instructional supervisor at the school, will talk more about the difference that pre-K makes. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Dr. Salvo. Good evening. We've certainly tried to maximize our existing space for pre-K. This school year, we expanded from 11 to 14 classrooms. And even with that, we still have a long waiting list as there's a great demand for our preschool program. The state caps preschool classroom size at 15 students, so that requires more individual rooms, and the rooms have very specific space requirements. So besides being completely out of space in this building, not enough classrooms meet the requirements for preschool use.
As mentioned earlier on several occasions, our preschool is eligible for the funding from the state to pay for all staffing and operational costs for expansion of our program. All we need is a space. The state aid for preschool costs, in addition to the state's $3 million, contributes to construction. Katie, why don't you talk a little bit about what our preschool program does?
Sure. So here at Middle Township, we offer a comprehensive and high-quality preschool program that focuses on the physical, language, and cognitive development of young children. We also offer a lot of opportunities to encourage social emotional growth. However, our older classrooms are outdated and not suited for our youngest learners. Many of our 3- and 4-year-olds have a hard time reaching the sinks to properly wash their hands. The bathrooms are outdated, and there's not enough storage for the teachers to be able to rotate materials in and out, which helps to keep
That wasn't me.
which helps to keep the environment
Welcome
stimulating.
everybody up. There you go.
We've also found that providing high quality preschool reduces the number of students in need of more intensive intervention services later on down the road.
Thank you, Katie. If fewer services are needed, that's also a budget savings for this district. Let's see, I know we've answered a lot about the pre-K. Does anyone else have any more questions about the pre-K program? Any questions from the virtual audience? Got it. Question from the virtual attendees, is the preschool for on the list for 3 and 4 year olds? The answer to that is yes. It's a 3-4 year old program. Do you have any data on whether children enrolled in pre-K program need special services through the remainder of the year? We obviously have to determine that when they come in, but there are preschool children that we have now that need special services such as OT or PT, but we provide that for any student that qualifies. How many pre-K students were enrolled last year? How many do you anticipate to be enrolled this year, Mr. P?
Sure. The number was around 160. And this year number will be around 200.
And we've added 3 rooms this year. We've made a shift to some. And how many, last year was 100 on the wait list. How many this year?
Around 50 to 60.
50 to 60. Thank you. Okay, now we'll go back to Mr. P to talk about the instructional space needs beyond pre-K.
Sure. At elementary number 1 here, we have 4 grade levels and more than 700 students, and we're utilizing every square inch of this building. You know, we hold small group instruction on the stage behind me. If I open that curtain, you'll see a small group instruction classroom, sometimes 2 at a time. Some teachers don't have a classroom, so they deliver their lessons to students on a cart. Some teachers don't have a home base, a place to store their belongings or their instructional materials. We have critical programs in our modular building that we need a plan for. And we have 0 margin for error. So let's say one of our aging HVAC units goes down. There's no available space in this building to move a class while we wait for repair. So we would have to severely disrupt another class or program in order to wait for those repairs to happen and then bring the classrooms back in. So we're severely limited here in how we can react in certain circumstances, and we have 0 room for growth.
Thank you, Mr. P. We also have a similar space crunch at elementary number 2. And Carrie, would you speak towards that?
Thank you. We have a large number of students who need either some extra support or some enrichment to further their education. And those, we're running out of spaces just like they are here at number 1 that are appropriate for that type of instruction. That type of instruction looks a little different than a traditional classroom with desks and rows. Sometimes it's tables. Sometimes they need floor space if we're doing robotics for STEM. Some of our small group instruction rooms that we're currently using are converted office spaces, which doesn't provide the space that's needed to reach all of the students who would benefit from the small group instruction. And it also doesn't give them the space that they would need to work on projects together, to work collaboratively. Our computer lab that we have, while it's beautiful, it's not suited for the type of technology that kids need to learn to be prepared for the middle school and the high school levels. They're learning robotics and coding, but that takes up space that we don't have unless we move all the furniture within the room to give them that floor space.
Thank you, Carrie. We're going to break for any more questions at this time. Is there anybody online? There is an online question. Okay. Waiting for it to come in. The question is, will any of the new instructional spaces support academically rigorous programming? Absolutely. That's what they're intended to do. For our 3 and 4 year olds and for our addition in number 2, moving to 2nd grade. And we'll move on to the last category. And we've talked about this and we've had some great questions and comments regarding our athletic area upgrades. We're going to turn it over to our athletic director, Josh McCarty, and our school principal, Dr. Sharon Rementer, and our middle school principal, Jeff Wortman. Just tell us about the current situation in Memorial Field and how the weather impacts our scheduling.
So with the current situation with our our grass fields, there are times where we will have significant rain events and we are moving events and games, sometimes days, sometimes weeks. Having the availability of a multi-purpose turf field would allow us to provide that game time or practice time to multiple teams within a day, possibly having 2, maybe 3 games after school on that field. And so it would definitely increase the opportunities for our students. The other thing is, as a centerpiece of the community, it would be available to our recreation programs and the community at large on those nights that we will be using it as a high school athletic program. And so it really is a chance to it's really a chance to make that a centerpiece here in the community.
Thank you, Josh. I don't know if people realize, but those of us in the high school realm, that turf is a requirement to host certain championships. And for example, our field hockey team has been very successful when they go play in the state finals or the state semifinals. It's on turf, and it's been a disadvantage for us for years. Dr. Rementer, you have some comments?
Sure. Our sports programs are such an important part of our school community and the wider community as well. It's great for our kids' morale. It builds great teamwork. We want them to have as much exposure to athletics as possible at the high school. The facilities, in particular, the bleachers and lighting, need upgrades to provide a great experience for the spectators as well. And very important, if we don't upgrade the bleachers, our graduation ceremonies are held on the field. And so that's going to be put at risk, and an alternative spot would have to be found.
And as far as middle school sports go, I remember being as an alumni of Middle Township Schools as an athlete a few pounds ago here in Middle Township. I would have loved the opportunity to play on the varsity field anytime I got when I was in middle school, elementary school. So this is a great opportunity for our middle school students to participate on these athletic fields, which helps us with retention. We're competing for kids. Dr. Salva mentioned at the beginning that every child's a dollar amount, and our 8th graders have a lot of options in Cape May County and beyond for where they can attend high school. But these newer athletic facilities would give them the opportunity to be on par with the other schools have to offer with the same programs.
Thank you, Jeff. Some more online questions. What's the difference between the current lighting and the new lighting? As we said earlier, the expense to repair the old lighting, we're going to replace that with LED lighting. So obviously it's more cost efficient. Who could use the turf field? It's my vision that all high school programs that would be football, field hockey, lacrosse, and soccer, and all rec programs in those areas will be able to use the field. What's the cost to maintain the turf field per year, such as the cost for cleaning, GMAX, testing, and grooming? The average cost of maintaining that field all goes around $10,000,
Right.
give or take, depending on what equipment you buy.
Correct, yes. And typically the equipment is part of the package, so it's just your maintenance staff would groom the turf, and the testing is very minimal, and it's not required like frequently.
And we're spending roughly, as I said, $50,000 a year on just that one field for maintenance. Jeff talked about retaining students. It's important that we maintain enrollment. When enrollment drops, we receive less funding, obviously, which leads to fewer services and possible staffing cuts. I also want to add that we turned down several requests this year to rent our field because it's grass and we just can't have the overuse. Turf would make our field more available to the township recreation leagues and host tournaments, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation. So now we're going to discuss the funding strategy. We're fortunate to have our experts here to talk about it. Online, I'll turn it over to Bond Counsel Everett Johnson and Financial Advisor Danielle Marina.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, thanks, Dr. Salvo. I'll start with a fun fact. Did you know that we're all paying into the state revenue fund that funds school construction? Only communities that approve referendums see the benefit, meaning that the amount being paid by the state comes from a line item appropriation, the state budget, and income taxes and sales taxes are the revenues that go into the state budget, which we all pay into, but only those communities that pass referendums benefit from receipt of monies being provided by the state. Middle Township Public Schools estimates the cost at $26.5 million. The state will pay approximately $3 million of that amount if voters approve the referendum. If any improvements are made through the regular budget, the expense falls completely on local tax bills. Danielle?
Thanks, Everett. As financial advisors, we analyze how the new investment will be repaid over time. So once the $3 million in state aid is factored in, the local share would be approximately $165 a year or $13 a month for an owner of a home assessed at the Middle Township average of $251,000. I just want to explain briefly the difference between assessed value and market value. As you can see on the screen, there's a QR code that'll bring you to a website where you can look at your assessed value. It's also on your tax bill, but assessed value and market value are two separate numbers. Market values have risen significantly over the past few years, but the assessed value is what you actually pay your taxes on. So that's just an important differential. And there's a financial advantage to the district. A portion of the borrowed funds, I do want to mention this, during the construction period can be invested, and the district could earn interest, which would then further reduce the impact on the debt to the taxpayers.
Thank you. I want to note that the bonds will be sold through a competitive bidding process to get the best rates, meaning when the bonds are sold, a notice will go out prior to such sale date to various underwriters, and they will bid on purchasing Middle Township's bonds. And the entity that has the lowest bid will receive the award of the bonds. And that competitive rate works well for the Board of Ed because you now have multiple eyes and you know when you're going to get the best price on that day because you're going to have multiple firms bidding on your bonds. The bonds themselves will generate tax-exempt interest, which are lower than mortgage and other types of borrowing rates, meaning that because the interest by the bondholders is tax-exempt, they're not paying taxes, on the interest that they're receiving from the school district. And because of that, they'll want to take a lower interest rate. Think about it this way: if you're going to receive $10 in interest, and let's say the tax rate was 30%, then you would receive $7 after taxes. But if the interest was tax exempt, then someone can pay you $7 and you receive the same benefit. The difference to the actual person paying the interest is they're not paying $10, they're paying $7. And so tax exempt interest rates give the Board of Ed better financial terms than most people will receive if they went out and borrowed money on their own.
I think I want to expand on something Everett said at the beginning was the state's giving us $3 million and we all pay into the New Jersey School Redevelopment Authority, School Construction Authority, where they grant money to school districts who pass bond referendums. It's the only way to get our own taxpayers' money back. It's a small amount, but it's an amount. Districts all over the state are doing bond referendums. Some are passing, some aren't, but they're using our money to do it. My thing is, why not get some of our money back? And this is the only way to do it. I appreciate all the info. And one of the questions I think we might have answered earlier, but just in case we haven't, about what happens if the project's costs come in higher or lower than expected, Everett?
Sure, I'll address that issue. Yes. So the district is not permitted to spend even $1 more than the voters approve for improvements. So if costs come in high for a project, the district must figure out what adjustments to make sure it stays within budget. In layman's terms, if for some reason costs come in at $27 million, which is above the amount we're anticipating issuing, then we would have to reduce projects to fit within the budget that was passed by referendum. We cannot spend more than was approved by virtue of the referendum itself. And so if the total costs are lower than estimated, then that difference must be utilized to pay down debt service, resulting in a lower tax rate. So if for some reason costs come in lower than the projected referendum amount, that difference is used to pay down that excess money's debt service, which would lower the tax rate. So we're capped at the referendum amount, but if we actually costs come in lower, there's a benefit to taxpayers and that they received a reduced tax burden.
We have a couple online questions. Does the state funding of 3 million or any funds for operational costs during the fiscal year come from the state lottery and any taxes in the casinos in Atlantic City?
No. The state lottery primarily funds pension benefits. So I guess indirectly teachers are benefited in that, you know, police, fire, state pensions are funded by the state lottery, but doesn't come into the $3 million you're receiving, nor does the lottery revenues come in to fund that money either. It's generated by an annual line item in the state budget.
Another online question: what happens when properties, if properties are reassessed, well, will taxes go up?
I can speak to that. So typically during a reassessment, it's kind of the rule of thirds. A third of the community's homes will remain assessed at the same value, a third will go up, and a third will decrease. But what happens is the total assessment in the township goes up and the tax rate comes down. So essentially you'll be paying the same amount, it's just that your value of your home is higher, but the tax rate has gone down.
Some further online questions. Can New Jersey use sales tax revenue to fund schools instead of property taxes like Florida does?
Currently, no, not without legislation authorizing the use of those monies for those purposes.
Other question: how do you know that the field will get the amount of use you anticipate? Have you created a sample schedule? Well, I can only go by the field requests that I've turned down over the years. Have we created a sample schedule? Only by what we've known and requested and turned down. We would have to actively go out and try to recruit and host tournaments, and our coaches would do that with us. Is the preschool program required by the state? Preschool is not required. And let me see, let me just, did I miss anyone? One more? Okay. Is it at the top? I'm sorry.
That one, yeah, the yellow.
I don't see the question. I'm sorry. Are the current preschool rooms outdated that were just built? No, the current preschool rooms are not outdated. Those rooms they meet all standards. The question of the preschool rooms is we don't have enough to accommodate our preschool population that has registered to come and enroll in our schools. Question: what happens if the state stops funding preschool? And I've asked several legislators this on both sides of the aisle. None of them are interested in stopping funding for preschool. That would be a political nightmare for them. Any other question is why is the average, repeat that, I'm sorry. Why is the assessed average based on the average and not the medium tax assessed value?
That's just a metric we use. just to help people understand where their taxes would approximately land. I mean, we don't know the median. You'd have to know the assessed value of every single residential home, and then to find the median, which we don't have. We only have the total assessed value of all the residential properties within the town and how many parcels are residential, and that's how we come up with that average number. But we do have, I mean, we could provide a calculator for each individual that you could put your home value into that would give you the exact amount based on the projected figures that you would pay.
But also, Danielle, if you have the median, couldn't that be thrown off by certain properties that will weigh, value much, much higher than other properties? If it's just a straight median versus what the average person will likely pay?
Exactly, yeah. There could be more homes valued less that would draw it down, or more homes valued more that would draw it up. So that's just we typically use just the average. And again, it's just a metric for you to understand where things may lie with your home value. So depending on what your assessed value is, it's either plus or minus on the amount that we've projected.
Mr. P, you have a statement from a staff member online?
Sure. This is a statement from an online participant. As a teacher in Middle Township, I see the value of preschool as children move forward in their education. Not all parents have the luxury of spending quality time with their children as they work to support their families. Their children will benefit from the attention they receive from educators as a supplement as the time they receive from their parents.
Another online question: why did the district's maintenance budgets go down this year, and how can we manage our HVAC if the budget is cut? The maintenance budget did not go down, and we are managing our HVAC very well at the moment. Is that it for the online? I want to thank all our panelists for providing information and answers tonight. I want to thank our community members who attended virtually and those that are here tonight in person. Anyone that's still here and would like to take a look at our preschool classrooms, we'll walk you around. I want to remind everyone that there's information on our websites that you can get a lot of FAQs from, and the vote is Tuesday, September 17th. Polls will open from 4 to 8. All polling locations will be open, so you should go where you normally vote in general and primary elections. Lost my spot again. Somebody move me. All polling locations will be open. Yep. If you vote by mail by September 17th, that's the last day to drop your ballot in the mailbox or one of the county drop boxes. Go to middletownshippublicschools.org/future for a list of drop boxes and other voting information. Even if you don't have children in our schools, it's important to vote. The quality of our schools impacts the entire community. I thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. We're going to hang around here for any additional questions you may have. And thank you very much. Appreciate it.